حياكم الله وبياكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome everyone to our 8th session in this blessed course, the Tajweed course. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to share the WooClap link with you so that you can join the WooClap and be engaged in class. You'll find the link in the Zoom chat. So everybody join WooClap. Inshallah, I'll tell you when I post a question. Right. To start today's class, today we are going to talk about the ruling of al-Idgham. And we've talked about Idgham before, it's not new. Last session we talked about التفخيم والترقيق, heavy and light letters. Today inshallah we will talk about the rulings of Idgham, which you'll find in the book on page 78, page 66. Babu al-Idgham wa aqsamuhu, the chapter on Idgham and its categories. طيب. So first and foremost, what is Idgham? Okay, Idgham, linguistically speaking, it is they say له عدة معاني والمراد منه هنا الإدخال. يقال أدغمت الشيء في الشيء أي أدخلته فيه. Basically it means to merge something into something else. So you have two things and you merge them into each other. That's what it means linguistically. Okay. في الاصطلاح, technically, specifically when we talk about Tajweed, what does Idgham mean in the context of Tajweed? Then it means to النطق بالحرفين حرفا كالثاني مشددا, pronouncing two letters as one. So there are two letters, but you pronounce them as one letter by using shadda. And please pay attention to this, the shadda. Okay, because there's no idgham. The idgham that we're talking about today, the real idgham, it's categorized by shadda. And it's funny they mentioned that. It's not funny, but it's ajib and weird that even though this is the definition of idgham in many tajweed curriculums and many books where they specifically mention shadda, when it comes to talking about the types of idgham, they include an idgham that doesn't have a shadda, and that's something that is weird. Okay, but my advice to you is just remember this definition and remember that idgham and shadda are synonymous with each other. Idgham and shadda are synonymous with each other. In other words, if you see a shadda, okay, and that's when we're talking about two separate words, not within the same word, we'll talk about that later. But when you have two words and the second word starts with the shadda, then that's idgham basically. That's idgham. Okay, and idgham, generally speaking, we've done it before when we talked about the rulings of nun as-sakin wa tanween, and we mentioned explicitly that it only applies specifically when it comes to tanween, because tanween is always at the end of a word anyway. That idgham is about when you have two words, okay, not within the same word. Within one word, the word itself, you're not going to have idgham. You can have a shadda in a word, such as the word shadda itself. The word shadda itself, this word, if you write it in Arabic, it's written like this: Sheen, Dal. Change the keyboard quickly. So the word shadda, it says Sheen, Dal with shadda, obviously. I'm not typing. So we have a sheen followed by dal with a shadda. It's probably too small, isn't it? Just give me a moment, inshallah, I'll make it bigger. So let's take this word shadda, shadda, shaddatun, okay? There's a shadda in the middle of the word. This is not idgham. This is not idgham. Why is it not idgham? Because the definition doesn't apply to it. Why doesn't the definition apply to it? Because number one, it said pronouncing two letters as one. Here we didn't pronounce two letters as one. Okay, we actually pronounced both letters. There's two dals here. Shadda means doubling of a consonant. So here we have two dals, a dal with sukun and a dal with fatha, and we are pronouncing both of them. We're saying shadda, shadda. We're pronouncing two dals. So we're not pronouncing two letters as one. We're pronouncing two letters as two letters. So idgham is only idgham when one of the two letters goes missing. Okay, so that's why when we did ahkam al-nun al-sakinati with tanween, what did we say? We said idgham, and that was a simplification, to be honest. We simplified it because it's actually this chapter here that we are in now when we're meant to talk about idgham. So when we talked about idgham in the context of nun al-sakinati with tanween, we said that idgham is to jump a letter. To jump. So you have, for example, min and then rabbika, and the ra has shadda. You say mir rabbika, mir rabbika. You didn't pronounce the noon. The noon has gone missing. Okay? Now this is idgham. Why? Because we're pronouncing two letters, i.e. the noon with sukun and the ra with sukun, as one letter, a ra. Noon has gone missing. We jumped the noon by using a shadda because the ra has a shadda. Okay? So remember that, inshallah. Is that clear? Everyone, obviously it will become clearer once we give more examples, inshallah, once we talk about it at length. The book gave a few examples here. وَقُرْ رَبِّي وَقُرْ رَبِّي. Okay, so here we have وَقُرْ رَبِّي. Let me write it down. It says وَقُلْ. Okay, that's a word. The next word is Rabbi. Okay, that's how it's meant to be. Okay, however, they added a shadda to the ra. Okay, now since we added a shadda to the ra now is doubled. We got two ras. Okay, so we say وَقُرْ Rabbi. Now what happened? What happened basically is we have this lam over here, and I'm going to, if you like, exchange the ra for two ras, just for the sake of, if you like, for the sake of presentation purposes. So we have فَقُلْ Rabbi. So we have two ras, a ra with sukun. I didn't write the sukun. I didn't write the sukun sign. You'll know that a letter without fatha kasra dhamma has a sukun automatically. So this ra here has a sukun and this ra has a fatha. Okay, so we have here these three letters. Now we have the lam over here. I'm going to give that a red color. And we have the ra over here. We'll give that a green color. Okay, so what happens basically is we have two letters. Okay, if it wasn't for idgham, we would have said وَقُلْ رَبِّي وَقُلْ رَبِّي. You would have said that. وَقُلْ رَبِّي. Okay, now it's a bit cumbersome to say that. وَقُلْ رَبِّي. And we'll talk about later why it's cumbersome. But it's not, you can't have flowing speech by saying وَقُلْ رَبِّي. Sounds like you got stuck. So what do? This is where idgham comes in. What does idgham do? Idgham says to you, you see this lam over here, you see this ra over here, these are two letters. Pronounce them as one letter using shadda. Okay, so we're going to use shadda. So we're going to keep one ra, we're going to put a shadda on this one. Okay, and we're going to pronounce one letter, two letters as one letter. In other words, this lam over here, we are not going to pronounce it. Okay, so it's as if we said this. It's as if we said this. وَقُرْ رَبِّي. That's what we're pronouncing basically. Okay, the lam is being pronounced as a ra. You got many other examples here. قد تبين لكم قد تبين لكم قد. So here we have قد with a dal. Okay. قد. Okay. And then we have تبين. Now the تبين is going to have a shadda because it's obviously idgham. Okay. قد تبين قد تبين. I didn't pronounce the dal. Okay. I jumped onto the ta. This is idgham. طيب. And remember, we've done this before. We've done this before when we talked about أحكام النون الساكنة والتنوين and also أحكام ميم الساكنة and other chapters. What are the benefits of al-Idgham? Why do we use idgham anyway? Then it is because they say here وفائدته الخفة واليسر في النطق. It is to make the pronunciation easy and light. إذ النطق بحرف واحد أيسر على اللافظ من النطق بحرفين. Because just pronouncing that one letter وقل ربي, just the ra, is easier than trying to pronounce both letters. Okay. Now does that mean that for the sake of this benefit we've mentioned, why not omit whatever letters we like? لا. There's a reason, there's a need for omitting that letter. There's a need for jumping that letter. Okay, there's difficulty in saying the lam. وَقُلْ رَبِّي. So that brings us to the causes of idgham. What causes idgham to be necessary? In other words, when does it become difficult to pronounce two letters together? What are the things that make it difficult for two letters to be pronounced together such that we have a need to jump the first one and to do idgham and merge onto the other? Okay, so there has to be a phonological need, as in there has to be a need when it comes to speech. Like, we're not talking about writing. The lam is still written, the dal is still written, it is there in writing, but we're talking about our pronunciation of it. Okay, so this has to do with phonology, it has to do with our pronunciation. So when, for the sake of making our speech flow, specifically for the sake of reading the Quran with Tajweed, and the Quran obviously, as we know, is the most beautiful of speech. It flows, it's beautiful to the ear, it's beautiful when it comes to pronouncing it. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مُدَّكِرٍ. Indeed, we made the Quran easy to remember, then is there anyone that will remember it? So the Quran has been made easy to be recited, to be memorized, and the science of Tajweed plays a massive role in that. Okay, and the rule of idgham likewise plays a massive role in that. So what are the causes, which here they call in the book asbab al-idgham, the reasons for idgham? Then there are three. Number one, at-tamathul. Number two, at-tajanus. And number three, at-taqarub. These are the three reasons. Okay, now, so two people have mentioned, you've mentioned two of the three in the chat. Okay, the name of the book is Tajweed al-Muyassar, and I don't use it exclusively, and I don't cover everything within the book. There's a lot of things that they mention which I don't believe you're in need of, but yeah. So we have here at-tamathul, identicalness, at-tajanus, similarity, and at-taqarub, closeness. These three reasons. Okay, similarity and closeness have been mentioned in the chat, but before similarity and closeness, identicalness. Two letters are identical. This is what we call at-tamathul. So we have what we call idgham al-mutamathilain. Idgham al-mutamathilain, the idgham of the two identical letters. In Arabic, mutamathilain is the dual form. So mutamathil is one, mutamathilain is two, i.e. the two identical letters. Idgham of two identical letters. They are the same letter. Such as, for example, yudrikum. يدرككم, or يوجه, or for example على أحد منهم مات, so meme followed by meme with shadda. إذ ذهب, all of these are what? إدغام متماثلين. All of these are situations in which we have two letters that we pronounce as one because of the shadda. So let me write some of the examples here. Let's take one of them. Let's take إذ ذهب. Let's take منهم مات actually. منهم مات. Excuse me, I'm not going to add the harakat. Apart from the shadda obviously. Okay. منهم مات. This is إدغام متماثلين. منهم مات. Okay, now some of you might ask, and if you do, I say Jazakallah khair, because it's a very valid question, which is, Ustad, how is this idgham? What did we jump? Okay, so I'm going to pose that question to you actually. How is this idgham? What did we jump? Didn't we pronounce all of the letters? So in all of these examples that I've given, منهم مات, إذ ذهب, يدرككم, how are these examples idgham? What did we jump? I mean, the last part of the question really gives it away, but how is this idgham? Okay, so you said we jumped the meme. Did I? Am I not still saying minhum mata? I'm pronouncing meme, 2 counts of meme. Minhum mata, إذ ذهب. I'm pronouncing 2 dhals. I'm pronouncing 2 memes. يدرككم. The first meme was jumped. We jump the first letter and go straight to the shadda. The meme from minhum. Naam. Meme in the first word. Okay. Naam, here we have a very good answer as well. This is basically one of the things I was looking for, one of the answers, which is there are 3 memes, but we only pronounce 2. Okay? So there are 3 memes. Minhum mata, we have 3 memes over here. This meme, which is the one we're sacrificing, and we have a meme in here with sukun that is hidden because of the shadda, and a meme with fatha. Minhum mata. Now when I say minhum mata, I'm in essence pronouncing these 2 memes. These 2. And for the sake of presentation again, let's separate them. Okay? Okay, so I'm actually pronouncing these 2. So when I say minhum mata, I'm pronouncing these 2 memes, and I'm jumping this one. So it's as if I said this. Minhum mata, minhum mata, minhum mata. Okay? Now, the question really is, we know we jumped the first meme, but how do we know? Okay? That's one question. And how many memes are we actually pronouncing? So we're actually pronouncing 2 memes, okay? And we have at our disposal 3 memes. Okay, so that's what we know. That's how we know that we've jumped something. That's one answer. The other answer is we jumped the first one. How do we know? Let's try and pronounce the 2 words separately. Then we'll know what we actually did. So let's go back to our original word, minhum mata. Okay? How would this be pronounced without idgham? Then you will know that we actually did idgham. I want you to do it by yourself before I tell you the answer, or if any of you wants to actually try it for themselves, you can raise your hand, I'll unmute you. So how would we pronounce this without idgham? Now, go ahead.
Minhum mata.
Again?
Minhum mata.
Okay, that's close. Anyone else? How would we pronounce this without shadda? Okay, go ahead.
منهم مات.
Ahsant, yes, perfect. If it wasn't for the idgham, we would have said minhum mata, minhum, and then let go of the letter, obviously, because whenever you pronounce the mim, you let go of the letter. Okay, so minhum mata, we would have said that. So here we're pronouncing three memes. Minhum mata, mata. So a meme with two counts. That's what we would have said if it wasn't for idgham. Minhum mata. So what does idgham do? Idgham allows us to join the first word to the next word, and it allows our speech to flow. Obviously, if we were to pronounce this as minhum mata, it would be very difficult, and it would sound like you got stuck. It would sound like perhaps you lost your breath. And if you repeat that continuously over the course of the safha, people will think you might have some kind of speech problem. Okay? Even if they don't know Arabic, they don't know Quran, they'll be like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he reading all the time? And why is he reading, or why is he saying something while his speech doesn't flow? People would realize and feel that your speech doesn't flow. Okay? And like I've said many times before, these Tajweed rules, my dear brothers and sisters, most of the Tajweed rules are not even, let alone it being specific to the Quran, it's not even specific to Arabic language. These rules exist in all of the languages. Every language has ways of making their speech flow. Okay? There is no language that I know of where people pronounce each word separately. Okay? Every language, they say words and they join words together so the speech can flow in sentences and paragraphs. Nobody pronounces every letter, every word separately. Okay? Except for someone who's learning how to read. Okay? And I'll give you an analogy in the English language, inshallah ta'ala, later on. Okay? طيب. So yes, this is idgham tamathul. Yes, when two letters are identical, there is an idgham. Even though you might feel like there's nothing being jumped, the meme is still being said. Obviously, when the two letters are different, it's more obvious that there's something that's jumped because it's not pronounced. But because the letters are the same, you might not really feel the fact that something is missing. Okay? Mainly because most people don't actually realize, or they don't remember that shadda is actually two memes. So they think minhum mata, we're actually pronouncing this meme and that meme. La. Technically speaking, that's not the case. Okay, we're not pronouncing this meme and that meme. La. We're pronouncing the two memes in here. طيب. The second one is at-tajanus. At-tajanus, which is similarity. Two letters that are similar. They're similar. Well, similar is different from identical. Identical is 100% the same. Similar means they have a lot in common. Similar means they have a lot in common. And in this particular context, what they have in common is the articulation point. Okay, so idgham al-mutajanisain is whenever you have two letters, right, that follow each other. And obviously, one thing you need to remember about idgham is that the first letter always has to have sukoon. If you have two letters after each other that are both vowelized and that both have vowels, idgham doesn't apply. Why doesn't it apply? Because we don't have two consonants following each other anyway. We have a consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. Okay? So it wouldn't apply. To give you an example of what I mean by that, if you go back to the idgham which was mutamathilain, if we say, for example, and this particular example actually is an idgham in the Quran, which is an exception, but let's say ta, ma, nu, na. Okay, let me try that again. Ta, ما نو نا. ضمة. Okay, this word over here. So here we have noon followed by noon, don't we? So are we going to say this idgham mutamathilain? لا, that's not the case. Why? Because let's write it in English so that it's clearer for you. Ta. Okay, that's the first syllable. Second syllable ma, nu, na. Okay, as you can see, we have a consonant followed by a vowel, and then a consonant, and then a vowel. So here, in essence, the two noons are not next to each other. One moment, please. Yes. So here if you look at it, ta, ma, nu, na. In Arabic, you might think there's two noons next to each other, but la. You need to remember that the vowel is in between the two noons. So this wouldn't be idgham. So keep that in mind. Okay. So idgham is only when we have two consonants following each other. So whenever you have two consonants right after each other, and those two consonants or those two letters from the Arabic alphabet, they have the same articulation point. And we talked about makharij al-huruf, and we said that there are letters that share the same articulation point, and the difference between them are their characteristics or their sifat. Okay, but they can have the same articulation point, such as the dal, the ta, and the ta. They all come from your tongue on the palate. Ta, ta, and da, same articulation point. So these letters are known. Or if you have, for example, a da followed by a ta, you would say this is idgham al-mutajanisain. Mutajanisain, i.e. from the word jins, which means the same nature or the same type. Okay, because they have the same articulation point. Idgham al-mutajanisain. Example. You got some examples here. We have idh-dhalamu, idh-dhalamu, or aradtum, aradtum. Okay, aradtum. Let's write that one, for example. Rad, and then dal. Okay, dal has got sukun, followed by a ta with shadda, of course, otherwise we wouldn't have idgham, and a dhamma, and then a mim. So this we pronounce as aradtum, aradtum. Where is the dal? Nowhere to be seen. Why? Because of idgham. Why do we do idgham? Because the dal and the ta have the same articulation point. So it would be really difficult. How would this be pronounced without idgham? It would basically be aradatum. How does that sound? Aradatum. Doesn't sound right. Okay? Speech doesn't flow. So for that reason, there's idgham here. How do we know there's idgham? Because of the shadda. Please remember, my dear brothers and sisters, when it comes to the Quranic script, you're not going to find the shadda in normal Arabic writing. You're not going to find it. This shadda is added here only in the Quranic script. Why? Because the Quran, we have to read it exactly the way it is, number one, and also the Quran is read by non-native speakers of the Arabic language primarily, who don't have this natural phonological skill, if you like. Everyone has this skill in their native languages. You believe it or not, you implement Tajweed when you speak English. In your English, you speak English with Tajweed. You don't know. Yes, but the reality is you do. Yes, and those of you done the Quran reading course, you know what I mean by that. We give examples, and we'll give an example as well later on. But the point I'm trying to make is that since you're a non-native, yes, and you try to read the Quran, they put the shadda there in order to help you out, so that you don't need to memorize all of the letters and their articulation points, and then remember it when you're reading the Quran, and then remember that they are close to they have the same articulation point or close articulation point. You can't do this. That's not something you can do consciously. Arabs do it subconsciously. It's just something that they've heard it so many times. That's how they speak. A native Arab won't say aradtum. He won't. He will say aradtum. He will say that automatically. A native Arab would not say, for example, إذ ظلموا. He will say إذ ظلموا. Okay? He will not say, for example, أجيبت دعوتكما. He wouldn't say أجيبت دعوتكما. He wouldn't break up his speech and say أجيبت دعوتكما. لا, he would join the two words. He would say أجيبت دعوتكما. But you as a non-native, you might not know that. So that's why the shadda comes to the rescue. Whenever you see a shadda, boom, jump onto it. Join the fatha or the kasra or the dhamma, the vowel, join it onto the shadda. And don't worry about anything in between. This is a general rule. A general rule. Whenever you have a shadda, yes, then no matter how many consonants there are in between, the last vowel that you have, join it onto the shadda. And this is what we call iltiqa'u sakinain, cluster reduction, we talked about in the Quran reading course. Okay? So idgham al-mutajanisain, same articulation point. Then we have idgham al-mutaqaribain, at-taqarub. Okay? Which is when you have two letters that are close in articulation point. Now, these letters, they don't have the exact same articulation point, but they're close enough to make it cumbersome for you to pronounce both letters together. Okay? Some of the examples are قُلْ رَبِّ. Okay? We've done this one before, haven't we? When we talked about the definition of idgham, we gave as example قُلْ رَبِّ, didn't we? Yes, here we did. Yes, we did. Okay, so let's use it again. This particular idgham that I gave, it's an example of idgham al-mutaqaribain. Why is it idgham al-mutaqaribain? Because the lam and the ra have articulation points that are close. Not the exact same, but they're close. Okay? قُلْ رَبِّ. Or, for example, we have نَخْلُقكُم. Did they write it here? Yes. أَلَمْ نَخْلُقكُم. نَخْلُق means we created. أَلَمْ نَخْلُق, have we not created? Kum, you. Okay, let's add the shadda. Allah is saying أَلَمْ نَخْلُقكُم, have we not created you? مِن مَاءٍ مَهِينٍ. The qaf obviously has a sukoon, Islam has dhamma, and the kha has sukoon. Okay? Nakh. How would it be without idgham? It would be nakhluqukum. Nakhluq, qaf with qalqalah, kum. But again, it doesn't sound right. That's why. Why doesn't it sound right? Because the qaf and the kaf, they're very close to each other in articulation point. Remember, the qaf comes from the soft palate, right at the top, and the kaf comes from the hard palate, right next to it. So right at the end, the last soft bit of your palate is the qaf. Where the hard palate starts, that's the kaf. Very close to each other in articulation point. It makes it difficult to pronounce them both at the same time. So what do? We pronounce both letters as if they are one letter by using a shadda, i.e. the shadda on the qaf. Alam nakhluqkum, nakhluqkum. Someone who doesn't know Arabic wouldn't know there's a qaf missing. But an Arab speaker knows there's a qaf missing. He knows that automatically. Why does he know that? Because number one, there is no word in the Arabic language where you have a kaf with a shadda like that. Kum means you. He knows that kum means you. Why does kum all of a sudden have a shadda? It must be because something has been omitted. What has been omitted? It has to be the letter that's close to the kaf. It must be the qaf. Automatically, a native Arab speaker or someone who knows Arabic will know that what you're actually saying is nakhluqkum, but you're saying nakhluqkum because it's easier to pronounce. Okay? Again, once we give this example in English, you know what I'm talking about. So these are the three causes of idgham. you would have noticed that here I've written al-tamathul, and here I've written at-taqarub. So which of these two is right? Which of these two is correct? Al-tamathul or at-tamathul? Because all of these are obviously tas and there's a lam here. So the correct pronunciation would be at-tamathul with a ta. Even though what's written is al-tamathul. Why is that? That's basically idgham. That's basically idgham. Why? Because the lam and the ta are close in articulation point. So we say at-taqarub, at-tamathul. So this is from the closeness, at-taqarub. We don't say al-taqarub, we say at-taqarub. We've done idgham. We've joined the a to the ta. We've jumped the lam. Why do we jump the lam? Because the lam and the ta are close in articulation point. At-taqarub. طيب. But there's one thing I want you to note, which is that the reasons behind why we have idgham, like the tamathul and the tajanus and the taqarub, these are phonological things, or even sometimes linguistic things to do with the language itself. So for you, even though we mentioned this, it's in the book, it makes things easy to understand, but it's not really needed for you to know or remember these three things when it comes to your recitation of the Quran. Yani, when you come across a idgham in your recitation of the Quran, when it comes to your pronunciation, there is absolutely no difference. If it's tamathul, tajanus or taqarub, you're going to be doing the same thing. Okay? So for you, all that matters is what's written. Is there a shadda? Yes or no? If there's a shadda, do your idgham. There's no shadda, don't. Simple. Okay? طيب. And the reason I say this is because there are exceptions mentioned in this book. The book mentions certain places when there shouldn't be idgham. Okay? But when the book mentions these exceptions, these are exceptions going back to phonology and linguistics, in a sense that why isn't idgham implemented here? And what have you, but when it comes to you is not going to be an exception to the rule. Why is it not going to be an exception to the rule for you? Because it's not going to have a shadda anyway. So you don't need to worry about it. Okay? So for example, we have قالوا وماذا, for example. Okay? قالوا وماذا. Wow followed by wow. The first wow is a sukun, next second wow has a fatha. Two wows that follow each other. This should actually be a idgham. But this wow is a wow of mad. We don't say قالوا وماذا. We don't do that because we will be getting rid of the mad, which would change the meaning. So that's an exception to the rule, where you have a letter with a consonant with sukun followed by another consonant, and it's an exception to the rule, but it's not relevant to you. Why is it not relevant to you? Because you're not going to find a shadda on the second wow anyway. So you can just say قالوا وماذا, like you would have. Okay? And if you look at the book, it mentions something called idgham al-kabir and idgham al-saghir. Idgham al-kabir, idgham al-saghir. The idgham al-kabir is the one we've mentioned earlier, which was ta'manuna. Remember we said, let's see if we can find it. Yeah, this example here, which we said is not idgham. Okay? This is not idgham in a sense of what we're learning today. Yes? But like I said to you, in the Quran, yes, you'll find that it's actually idgham. In the Quran it's written ta'manna. So in the Quran you'll find that there's no dhamma here, and you're gonna find a sukun there. Yes? It's actually written like that in the Quran. But originally the meaning was ta'manuna. Ta'manuna. So in this kind of situation whereby you have two, it doesn't happen all the time, it happens sometimes, which is where you have a letter with a vowel followed by another letter with a vowel, and they're both the same two consonants. Sometimes what happens is the vowel is omitted and we end up with a shadda, ta'manna. But when it happens and when it doesn't happen, this has to go back to linguistics, to phonology, to a science that is outside the science of Tajweed. Okay, and this is why I call a classical example of tajweed overspilling into other sciences, and it happens all of the time. Wallahi, this book is filled with it. Situations whereby they include a category or something within tajweed, not because of it having any sort of effect on the way you recite the Quran, but rather because of the fact that there's some kind of overlap between tajweed and some other science in the Arabic language. And this is a prime example, ta'manuna. They say this is idgham al-kabir, whereas idgham al-saghir is the one we're doing today. What I'm saying to you today is, don't worry about idgham al-kabir, just worry about idgham al-saghir. When you come across this ta'manuna, or two letters that are consonants with a fatha and a dhamma in between, you don't need to worry about this. Why? Because in your pronunciation, you're not going to pronounce an idgham anyway. The only reason we say in the Quran ta'manna, in one of the qira'at, the only reason we do that is because there's a shadda on the noon anyway. If the shadda wasn't there, we wouldn't have said it. Okay? So, I just want you to remember this always. And this will make, I guarantee you, will make the science of tajweed easy for you to grasp, easy to understand. It will be less intimidating. Tajweed is about improving your recitation of the Quran. Anything that does not contribute to that is a distraction, specifically for a beginner. Okay? So you always have to ask yourself this question. This information that I have, will it change the way I'm going to pronounce it? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then it's actually a distraction to you as a beginner. Okay? And I'm guilty of it to a certain extent, in a sense that because it's something that is in the books and that is being taught, I don't want to give you like a tajweed course and then later on when you say to someone I've learned tajweed and they ask you basic questions like idgham, tamathul, tajanus and taqarub, you'll be like, I never heard of that. That's not gonna look good in a sense. And also it wouldn't be suitable for me as a teacher not to teach what is known to be part of the science or what the scholars teach in the science. So yes, there are certain concepts that I exclude that I feel might confuse you. But this particular one that we've learned, tamathul, tajanus and taqarub, is a good thing to know. However, when it comes to your recitation of tajweed, your recitation of the Quran, there's only one question you need to ask yourself, which is there a shadda? If there's a shadda, make sure you jump the previous consonant. That's all there's to it. And wallah, to be honest, the whole lesson we could have just put it in that one sentence, which is, when you're reading the Quran, you see a shadda, just join whatever vowel you have onto the shadda and don't pronounce anything in between. The whole lesson could be, in a nutshell, could be summarized into that one sentence. So write that down, inshallah. طيب. Types of idgham. The book mentions there are two types of idgham. Okay? Idgham kamil and idgham naqis. Idgham kamil, complete idgham. Okay? Which in English is also known as elision. You allied. In other words, you jump. And this is the actual idgham that we are learning today. Okay? The elision idgham. The one where we jump a complete letter. And you also have another idgham called idgham naqis, which in phonology is known as assimilation, whereby you kinda join two letters together, but you don't completely get rid of the first letter. Okay? To tell you the difference between the two, idgham kamil is synonymous with shadda. Always gonna have a shadda. That's the idgham we're talking about today. And it takes place between two words. It doesn't take place within one word. And why doesn't it happen in the middle of a word? Let me ask you that question. Why do you think this idgham kamil doesn't happen in the middle of a word? Let's see what you think. Why doesn't idgham al-kamil, the complete idgham, happen in the middle of a word? So idgham kamil, i.e. we jump a letter. Why doesn't that happen in the middle of a word? Anyone? And imagine in the middle of a word you have this shadda with the consonant before it, and we completely jump that consonant. When I talk a word, I'm talking about grammatical words. I'm not necessarily talking about the way they are connected. We've got suffixes and prefixes. Suffixes and prefixes for the most part are separate words. So nakhluqkum, for example, that's in the middle of a word if we're talking about the word being connected. But if we talk grammatically, nakhluq is one word, kum is another word. So they're actually two separate words. But let's say nakhluq, or a word that is similar to it, having idgham kamil in the middle of that word, why do you think that is something that won't happen? Yes, the meaning of the word would be lost. The meaning of the word would change. It would be a different word. Because now you're jumping a whole letter. So generally speaking, words consist of 3, 4, 5, 6, maximum 7 letters. Yes, the original words. Or the original roots of words. You get rid of one of those letters, it's going to change. It's going to be a different word. Okay? So it doesn't happen. The idgham kamil, the one we're talking about, it doesn't happen in the middle of word. That's why we said idgham, even when it comes to ahkam nun sakinat wa tanween, it's at the end of one word, beginning of another. If, however, you have it within the same word, we don't do idgham. We don't do idgham. So dunya, for example, on the opinion that ya is from the letters of idgham, dunya, we don't say dunya, we say dunya. We pronounce the noon with idhar. Okay? Why can't it happen in one word? We mentioned because the meaning would change. Some of the examples, all of the examples we've done so far are idgham kamil. Okay? How about idgham naqis then? What's idgham naqis? Idgham naqis, there's no shadda involved. Number one. You won't see a shadda. Now, since there's no shadda involved, that also means automatically that we're not completely jumping the letter. Okay? Rather, what's happening is that we are preserving some of the letter, some of its features or attributes, and omitting something else. So to give you an example, we're going to give you an example that will make it clear. We have here ahattu. Ahattu. Let me write it down. Okay, this word. Ahattu. See this word? What happened here? Now, for one, I didn't say ahattu, which is how I would have pronounced it. Ahattu. Why? Because the ta is a letter with qalqala. So I should say ahattu, but I didn't. Instead, I said ahattu. Now, at the same time, I didn't completely jump the ta. I didn't say ahattu. Look at the difference. This is how it would have been if we did a complete idgham. And this ta has a shadda. If it had a shadda, it would have been ahattu. But we're saying ahattu. What's the difference? What's the difference between ahattu and ahattu? What's the difference? Who can tell me? Okay, so the difference is ta was pronounced okay, fine, but I also pronounced a ta when I said ahattu. That's a ta pronounced there as well. Ahattu, that's with the ta, with the idgham naqis, incomplete in the idgham. Ahattu is with the complete idgham. Half sound of ta and ta. Okay, so what's the half a sound? To be more precise, we've done the heaviness. Ahsant, barakallah feek. Yes, one person put the answer there. The heaviness. Ta is from the letters or حروف الاستعلاء. خصة ضغط قض ضغط طا. It's from the حروف الاستعلاء. It's one of the heavy letters. So even though we lost the characteristic of qalqala, and remember one thing, ta and ta have the same articulation point. So that hasn't changed. Okay? أحدت أحط, they're both from the same articulation point. The difference here is going to be between the sifat, the characteristics. So أحطت and أحدت. The difference is that أحطت, there's no qalqala, which would have been there. So we've sacrificed the qalqala. Qalqala has been omitted. So in that sense, it's idgham. But it's not idgham kamil, it's not complete idgham. Why? Because we preserve the heaviness. It's still heavy. Ahad, as opposed to ahad, and ahad. Difference. So we preserve the heaviness. And then we pronounce the ta after that. Okay, so if you look at ta, the letter ta, it has an articulation point which is the same as the ta, nothing changed there, but it also has two characteristics. It has qalqala and it has heaviness. We didn't do complete idgham by getting rid of all of the sifat and attributes of ta and just using the sifat of ta. We didn't do complete idgham. Neither have we done idhar, i.e. pronouncing the ta the way it should be pronounced. Why? Because we did not pronounce the qalqala, even though we preserved the heaviness. So in that sense is what they call idgham naqis, an incomplete idgham. And that's the reason why there's no shadda. Because shadda would necessitate what? Shadda would necessitate we completely jump the letter. Okay? طيب. This is idgham naqis and idgham kamil. However, having said that, to be perfectly honest with you, I see this to be the same as ikhfa. Okay? This is the same as ikhfa. Okay, remember ikhfa when we talked about ikhfa and idgham, and we said ikhfa, the difference between ikhfa and idgham is that when it comes to idgham, we got rid of the ghunna and the original articulation point. And when it comes to ikhfa, we preserve the ghunna, but we don't pronounce the letter from its articulation point. This is kind of similar to that. Okay, I'm not here to say to you this is ikhfa, right? I'm not going to go against what the scholars of Tajweed have mentioned, apart from what I find reference for that scholars of Tajweed have mentioned before. I haven't come across this yet. That's why I'm not going to say to you it's ikhfa, but I just want to establish the similarity here. Yes? And that's why ikhfa doesn't have shadda, that's why this one hasn't shadda. It doesn't have shadda, okay? And to be honest, the difference of opinion that we talked about before, when we talked about the ahkam nun sakinat with tanween, it was really about this. It was about the fact that idgham is of two levels. Okay? That's why they mentioned that idgham with a ghunna, without ghunna, يسمى الإدغام بغنة إدغاما ناقصا لذهاب الحرف وهو النون أو التنوين وبقاء الصفة وهي الغنة. So we mentioned that the idgham with ghunna, they call it also idgham naqis. Okay? Because the idgham is still there. Whereas the idgham without ghunna, like the lam and the mim and the ra, and the noon, this we call idgham what? Or like the lam and the ra, sorry, is idgham without ghunna. That's a complete idgham because we completely got rid of the noon. So they also call that idgham naqis and idgham what? Kamil. And that idgham naqis, like we mentioned, some of the scholars they mentioned, is not idgham naqis. In essence, it's ikhfa. And this one as well here, it's very similar to ikhfa. And that would again preserve the universal rule of idgham. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning that I find it weird that when they define idgham, they define idgham by way of what? By way of shadda. But then they include in idgham naqis, which doesn't have shadda. There's a contradiction there. Okay? If idgham is going to be defined by way of shadda, then idgham al-naqis should have shadda. If it doesn't have shadda, then it shouldn't be idgham. But it is what it is. All of this at the end of the day, like we said many times, it's nothing but mustalahat, technicalities. But the fact of the matter remains that when it comes to idgham kamil, you completely get rid of it. Whenever you see a shadda, you don't pronounce any consonant that comes before it. And anything else, such as idgham naqis, then there is no shadda there to help you out. But you just need to, when you pronounce it, make sure that you don't pronounce the qalqala. For example, you say ahalt to. So this one might be the most difficult part here, mainly because of the fact there's no shadda here to help you out. Okay. But if we read this here, we have basalt ta, okay, ahalt to, okay. طيب. So this is idgham naqis. طيب, let's do some practical implementation. Before we do some practical implementation, I've got a question. What chapters that we have covered before are related to al-Idgham? So out of everything that we've learned so far, either in this course or the Quran reading course, what chapters would you say are related to Idgham or have something to do with Idgham? Questions or will clap? Sorry, we're going way over time, you know. The workshop is meant to start. No answers? What chapters we have covered before are related to Idgham? Rules of Noon as-Sakin and Tanween, rules of Mim as-Sakin and Tanween. Good. That's when it comes to this Tajweed course. But there's other chapters too, actually. There's one other chapter that's related to Idgham as well. Think. Okay, so I'll tell you. Times of the essence here. The chapter of Makharij, my dear brothers and sisters, how is that not related to Idgham? Of course it is. Because, you know, it's the Makharij, the letters having the same Makhraj or being close in Makhraj that define if we're going to have Idgham or not. Okay? So the Makharij and Sifatul Huruf are related to this. Ahkam Noon as-Sakinati with Tanween are related to this. Ahkam Mim as-Sakinati as well are related to this. And also another thing that we've done in the Quran reading course that most of you should know are what we call Ash-Shamsiyya and Qamariyya letters. Shamsiyya and Qamariyya letters in essence is nothing but Idgham. That's what it is. Okay, so for example, when it comes to Shamsiyya and Qamariyya letters, the Arabic alphabet has 28 letters. 14 of them are Shamsiyya and 14 of them are Qamariyya. Okay, now obviously there's no way you can memorize all those 14 letters. But the question is, why are there 14 letters that have Shamsiyya and 14 letters that have Qamariyya? Why? Why 14 letters that follow the lam, we pronounce the lam? The other 14 letters, they follow the lam, we don't pronounce the lam? It's because, if you like, lam can be considered to be the middle letter out of all of the letters in a sense. Okay? And it basically is close to 14 letters. You know, you have some of the letters articulation point is right towards the edge of the mouth or towards the throat. Okay? And you got some letters that are bang in the middle, such as lam. Lam is one of those letters. It's bang in the middle. So there are 14 letters that are either they are mutaqaribain. Mutamathilain, lam of course itself is mutamathilain. There's no mutajanisain because lam has its own articulation point that it doesn't share that with any other letter. And the other 13 letters are all from articulation points that are close to the lam. So to refresh your memory, remember this diagram. Okay, let's look at this diagram. What do we have? We have the lam over here, don't we? Okay, now all of the letters that are mainly on this side towards the edges, like the throat letters or the letters that come from the mouth, they are qamariya letters. Why? Because they're far away from the lam. So we would say al-kha, we would say al-ghain, al-ha, al-haram, al-ain, al-an, al-hakum, no problem. Al-Quran, qaf, al-kufr, kaf. Okay, so all of these letters here, you know, these 8, if you like, they're all qamariya, because they're quite, the distance between it and lam is far. Same thing with these over here, al-waw, al-mim, al-ba, al-fa, no problem. Okay, now as we come a bit closer to the lam, all of these letters on top, all of them are shamsiya, all of them. Okay, so we have the ra and the zay and the noon and the ra and the ta and the, you know, ta, dal, ta, ta and dal, va, tha and dal, sin, shin, zay. You know, all of these are what? Shamsiya letters. Why? Because they're so close to the lam. This lam is the tip of the tongue. It's gonna go up here, isn't it? It's gonna be close to all of these letters. Okay. Then we have dad. Dad is kind of like close as well, because dad comes from the whole side of the tongue. Lam from the tip of the tongue, dad from the side of the tongue, so it's very close as well, even though it's written here, but dad actually spans the whole tongue, so it's close to the lam as well. That's why we say walad-dalin. We don't say walal-dalin, walal-dalin, la, walad-dal, we don't pronounce the lam. Then we have jim, sheen and ya. Out of these 3, the sheen is the only one that is shamsiya. Okay, and then jim and ya are not. Okay, jim and ya are not. So if you like, shamsiya and qamariya is nothing but idgham. It's related to idgham. And I really find it ajib, unfortunate, and a complete waste of time. When in some Arabic courses, some Tajweed courses, they teach you a whole list of shamsiya and qamariya letters. There's no point. There's absolutely no point. Why? Because all you need to do is look out for the shadda. That's what, when we talk about Tajweed. If we talk about Arabic as a language, maybe different story. Okay? And you're not really going to memorize these letters anyway. You're just going to subconsciously get used to it. But nevertheless, when it comes to the Quran, all of the shamsiya letters will have a shadda, guaranteed. And all the qamariya letters won't have a shadda. So all you need to do again is just look out for the shadda. Then we have ahkam noon as-sakina. I wanted to go through these, and we might be able to go through them quickly, in terms of taqarub, tamathul, or tajanus. So noon, when it comes to noon, is tamathul, it's the same. Noon and mim are what? They're not tajanus, they're not from the same articulation point, but they're taqarub. How are noon and mim taqarub anyway? Who can tell me? I mean, noon is from the tip of the tongue, mim is from the lips. How are they close? They're not even from the same part. We mentioned that we got 3 main parts. We got the throat, we got the tongue, we got the lips. They're not even from the same main articulation part. The taqarub in noon and mim is in the ghunnah, because we said the ghunnah is also a separate articulation point. So they're close to each other because of the ghunnah. Okay? Then we have lam. Lam and noon are very close. Likewise, lam and ra, very, very close. Noon, lam, ra, very close. And then we have the waw and the ya. The waw and the ya, then they, as we mentioned before, you know, they're not actually idgham, to be honest. Then we have ahkam al-mim, which is the mim, very simple. We said that mim is mutamathil. When it comes to ahkam mim as-sakina, we said mim followed by mim is idgham. Yes, because they're the same letter. Minhum mata, like we did at the beginning of the lesson. This is idgham. And we already talked about the shamsiya and qamariya letters. Okay? And we explained how they are all related and close. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. Any questions? نعم, yes, I heard about that. I heard about Sheikh Khalid al-Raddadi that he passed away. رحمه الله تعالى. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. May Allah تعالى have mercy on the Sheikh. طيب, we'll go on to the workshops. We're quite late, so I'll see you on the inside, those of you that are part of the workshop, and the rest of you, inshallah, I'll see you next week. If you have any further questions, feel free to post them in the Telegram channel, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you answer my question? Which is, will this assimilation happen with every word that has a ta followed by a ta? Yes. Anytime you have a ta and a ta that follow each other, where the first one has a sukoon and the second one has a fatha, you are going to have idgham naqis, and you're going to have this partial assimilation. It's going to happen. Okay, so these are just examples, but this relates to all of these letters. Okay, and there are some letters, I mean, we can give you a list of letters that will have idgham naqis, but that might be too cumbersome because you can't memorize them. But inshallah, like I said, it's not very frequent in the Quran anyway, and inshallah ta'ala, with the idgham naqis in particular, there are no shortcuts. You just have to inshallah get used to it, and you will get used to it inshallah ta'ala. Any qari that you listen to, he will say ahatu. No one that you'll come across that knows Arabic will say ahatu. Okay, it doesn't even sound right, and I'm sure even you might notice yourself when you recite it that it doesn't sound right. Assalamu alaikum.